Start recording. Hey everyone, Donna Dracunis, Sequential Artist Workshop, Procreate and Tech Tips. We're going to do Procreate color stuff today. And so, without further ado, I will pin my iPad and we will look at stuff. If I can get my Apple Pencil off it. Okay, there we go. So, someone asked me in the last class, are we going to do colors? And so I said yes, because I wanted to go through all the things up here on Procreate. And in recent videos, I did the gallery. The gallery is just this. But I did a lot of stuff in the actions menu, and we did the adjustments menu, except for liquify, which is coming sometime in the future. And we did some stuff about selections and transform. So we did this side. We did brushes and stuff a lot last year, which are in the recordings, but I'll probably do more again soon. But since someone asked me about color, and I love color, I decided we will look through all this color stuff today, and I'll show you things that I discovered in here that you can do, and things that I do that I just made up, and how I do stuff like this. I have a ton of pictures like this with the color palette in them. When I see something I really love, I do this and I make a color palette for it. And I do that with photos. That one's from Facebook. This was my breakfast one day. I just was looking at it, I'm like, wow, I really love the colors of that. So I took a picture and made a color palette from it in Procreate. And then I have this, which is I have put a bunch of them in one file, but these are screen captures or pictures from the internet of comics that I like to page from, that I saw in a digital comic or a book review, and I saved the image and I put the palette in, and then I try to like examine them and see what I like about them. And I did notice, as I did this over and over again, some repeating color palettes that I like, and some attributes of these, like, are they, very bright? Are they dark? Do they have a lot of different colors, or are they limited palettes, and so forth? So I noticed that I like limited palettes, and usually kind of complementary colors or split complementary colors. And that's something I learned as I was going through this. So this is like one of my favorite ones. And like anything with green and red, or any kind of version of green and red, is complementary colors. So that's what you got going on mostly over here. And then purple and yellow, which is not the main thing there, but there is some in there. And of course, the green and red carry from that page. But anyway, I just kept doing this with pictures that I saw in books I like. There's a purple and yellow again. And here you've got a lot of green and red, or, orange is red. So I, count it. So this is something that you can do. So let's make one of these right now, and then I'll show you more stuff. So what I want you to do is go into your Procreate and just from the gallery, click photo, and then go through your photos and find a picture that has cool colors in it. I'm gonna pick this because it's got lots of colors in it. Okay, so first of all, you open that picture in Procreate, so then you can see it. So there's two ways you can make a palette for it. So the first way is you can go into the colors thing. So you touch the color picture here, and you pick palettes, and you can pick a plus sign here after you get in the palettes one. So you go to the circle at the top, then you go all the way to the bottom and make sure this palettes is chosen, because this won't work in one of the other views. So you choose palettes, and then go back to the top and click plus, and it gives you some options. So you can create a new palette. So if we wanted to do this manually, we would say create a new palette. But first we're going to do new from photos. So we're going to click the circle, palettes, back to the top, plus, then new from photos. And then you're going to go look for the same photo that you opened. So I'm going to click on this photo again. And look, there's my palette from image, and there's my picture. So one thing I did notice is that a lot of times the colors are not quite as bright, or they're a little toned down from the picture to me. These colors look a little less saturated than these colors to me. But this is how I do it generally anyway. So does everyone have a picture open and made a new palette from it? Okay, so now what we're going to do is on your iPad, if you click the two buttons up here all the way in the upper left, the one on the side and the first one on the top, if you click them together, it does a screen capture. And if you touch the screen capture, it opens it up. So that's what I want you to do. So then you see everything you saw on your screen. And then I bring it in and I crop it around the palette there. So that's all I want. And then I'm going to say done. And I'm going to say copy and delete. So it's going to copy this little part of my screen capture to the clipboard. It's going to delete it, so it's not going to save the screen capture or anything to my photos. So I say copy and delete, and then I go into, you go back to your file in Procreate. I swipe down with 3 fingers and say paste. And then I can size and move that little palette wherever I want and have it like in my image. And then I can save this like that and have that for a reference. See where I got the colors from and what the colors are. And then you can keep it in here or you can delete it. I've kept a bunch from some of my favorite things, but if you do this as much as I do, you can end up with 100. So every once in a while I go through and delete them because I have them saved in the image. So this is a really cool thing to do regularly, to learn about your own color tastes and to examine the colors. So here we've got red and green again, but of course this has like also blue and pink, and this is, it's kind of a limited color palette, but it still has a lot of colors in it. But anyway, if you
Hey,
think that,
Donna,
yeah, go ahead.
I just want to chime in and say I think it's brilliant that you're putting these like on different pages using page assist so you can swipe through them. I've never thought to do that. And so when I do this, they're all separate Procreate documents and
Yes.
it's very hard to look through them. So I just want to really point out that that is really
Mhm.
smart.
Well, I would like to point out that I never did that until today for this class.
I feel so much
So,
better that it didn't occur to
yes.
me.
So these are all separate files
Aw.
on my iCloud. Yeah. But when I opened it for the class, I was like, well, this is really great. I can do it right in that file. I can keep them all together. So yeah. But I didn't think of it before today. But I just want to show you, yeah, I want to show you if you don't like the way the palette comes out, because some people are really more sensitive to exactness of colors than I am, or whatever. If you don't like what the automatic palette gives you, you can open your photo, and again, you can open the colors, make sure it's on the palette section, and click plus, and then you say create a new palette, and then you get a blank palette. And you can use the eyedropper tool to touch the screen and grab colors, and then you just touch an empty square in the palette and it adds it. So you can go around your image and find the exact colors you want and put them
Uh,
in there. So
uh,
that gives you another way. And of course, you can zoom way in that way too. So if you want to like point to a specific pixel to get that exact color, because when you see a thing that's green, if you zoom in on it, because this is embroidery, you know, not every piece of the thread is going to be reflecting the light the same way. Um, or if it's a painting, there's usually blends and gradations. So you can go through that and you can manually make a palette with the colors that you want if you're not happy with that.
Donna, I'm sorry, I lost you at the screenshot. I have the screenshot here up on my Procreate. Can you just mind doing that
Yeah,
again?
we'll do it again. Let me start over. No problem. Okay, so I opened my picture in Procreate, and then I click the two things for the screenshot, and then I touch the screenshot really quickly, because if you just leave it there, it will disappear and go into your photos. but I don't want it to do that. So as soon as you touch these two buttons, it should pop up over here as a screenshot. You just touch it and it opens up. So this one, I did the wrong thing. So I'm going to say done and delete screenshot because I want the color palette to be in here. So I have to remake my color palette, create new palette from photos is what I wanted. And I'm going to do it again for my picture. So I have that. Now I'm going to do my screenshot and touch it because this palette that I made is what I want to get a screenshot of. So now I'm just going to crop it. Just drag it so that that's all that's showing, and you can make it as tidy as you want. It doesn't matter. Got that?
Oh, no, sorry, I don't. So I'm just caught up to the very last thing you said. So I've got the screenshot up here.
Okay, so you have your picture and you have your palette.
I don't have the palette from the picture. How did you get? Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
you have to do that before you do the screenshot.
Okay, no, I do. I have that. Yes, I did that.
So
Yeah,
you have your picture and then you have your palette in your color
right,
thing from the picture.
right.
Then
Yes.
you do the screenshot and touch it.
Then I do the screenshot and
Touch
touch it.
it. So it opens the screenshot.
Okay, yeah, I think, yeah,
And
done.
now you can crop it. All we want from the screenshot is the color palette. So you can just drag the corners
Okay.
and crop that so that all you see is the color palette.
Oh, okay, okay,
Because
okay.
that's all we want to capture right now.
Okay, yes. Okay,
And then you got that, you say done, and you say copy and delete.
copy and delete. Oh my goodness, all these steps. So where,
Well, I mean, you could do it a different way. I mean, you could go here and you could save the screenshot to your photos, and you could do whatever you want. You could have this save the screenshot to your photos, then bring it into Photoshop and copy and paste this isn't the only way to do it. This is just how I do it. So when I get the palette crop that I want, I just say done, I say copy and delete, and then that goes away. And then I can go into Procreate and paste it into my image.
so how did you do that? You went into, oh, I see. Okay. Paste,
Yeah, you just do the 3-finger swipe down and paste.
allow.
And
Okay,
because you said copy and delete from the screen one, it gives you that.
okay, got it.
So you can make a reference for yourself of things you like. So I found that like super easy. And I never make the palettes by myself manually, but I wanted to show you that you could. You can make a blank one and, manually add the colors to it, but I just never do that. I might look at this though and say, well, that pink looks really brighter, so I really want to get a really bright pink selected. And then you can go to your palette. If you click and hold, when you let go, it says set color, current color. So now I just made that one brighter. So you can, you can change some of the colors in here, but I never start from scratch and color pick every color in it. I just don't like to do that. So anyway, that's just, how I gather these things that I like. But I wanted to show you some more things in this color thing on Procreate and what I discovered from that and the colors I like. So we looked at the palette one today first because we were creating a palette and you have to be on the palette page or tab or whatever. So down at the bottom of the color thing, there's palettes, value, going from right to left. Palettes, value, harmony, whoops, classic, and disc. So usually I work on the disc. And the disc shows you the current, most recent palette that you've been using. So I just made this new palette. See here, it's checked here as the default. If I click on another palette, that gets the check. Whichever palette you touch and it has the blue check mark, when you go to the disc view, that's the palette you see here. And then these are colors you recently used, and they can come from anywhere, whatever. If you pick them like that and use it, then it'll show up there. So if you use a color and you want to go back to a color you used a couple minutes ago, that's handy for that. Shows you the recent colors. But anyway, so the color wheel is the one probably we're most familiar with. You go around the outside to change the actual color or the hue, red, green, blue, whatever. And then inside, you go from light at the top to dark at the bottom and more saturation. So you just drag around and find what you like. If you're creating the colors. And sometimes I'll do that, like I'll take a color from my palette that I made and I'll say, well, I need to put a shadow on something or whatever, and I might want to go darker. So I don't only use exactly what's in the palette. I might tweak them a little bit as I'm painting. And that's, that's up to you. So I use classic sometimes as well. So you notice that this shape here kind of looks like the center of the disc, only it's a square instead of a circle. So you've got dark and light, gray to more saturated color. And here you've got dark and light, gray to more saturated color. So that's the same thing, except it's a square instead of a circle. And you can change your hue and saturation and brightness with these sliders. So this slider, first one, acts like the outside circle here. And then these other ones just move it across sideways or up and down. But what they give you the control is say I had picked this color from my palette and all I want to do is make it darker. I can just drag down and it goes straight down. So this, instead of maybe going down in diagonal if I drag it on the circle or by hand. So this is very similar controls to that. And sometimes I use it. I probably use it sometimes because it's older. It's an older style of color picker than this one. So I was used to it from other patterns, but you might want to try it. It's really easy to get white and black just by dragging to the corner. And yeah, so that's just a preference, which one of those you like. Then we looked at palettes on the other end, and then there's this one called value. And this has numbers. The reason you would use this is if you were using something and you actually knew from some other source the RGB numbers or the hue, saturation, and brightness numbers, or there's something called a hexadecimal number. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. You'll never use the value palette unless you know what this is. So, but like web colors used to be listed. If you look in HTML code, you'll see color numbers like this for your color. So if you wanted to copy, if you're a techie geek and you wanted to copy a color from a web page or something like that, that's what this value one is. I never use it. This is the one that I learned about my colors from. So I always like color theory. What's that? What is all these things? So this harmony thing has color theory stuff in it. So if you click on the circle, then on harmony at the bottom, then up here under the word colors, there it'll say something. I don't know what yours will say because whatever you use last, but click on the text under the word colors, and this menu comes up that has 5 things in it: complementary, split complementary, analogous, triadic, and tetradic. So we're going to start with complementary. So open your same picture you were in or another picture. I have one of these comics that I was looking at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this reddish color. And then I'm going to open the color thing on complementary on the harmony palette. And I can see the complementary color to this orangey red is a blue towards the aqua side. And if I look at this, it's got a lot of, it's not exactly the same. So this leads you to believe that you have to pick this exact color if you want to have complementary colors, but it's not that close. That's the exact orange red that is in this image. But if you notice the blues and greens here, it's near this, but it's not exactly that. And I think I used to get stuck because I used to think, well, if I pick this orange, then to do complementary colors, I have to pick this exact color exactly on the right distance across on the color wheel. and otherwise it's not. But no, anything near that makes a complementary color. So I was saying before, red and green is the one that I see the most. That I thought, oh, I don't like that. It's a Christmas tree, red and green. But this is like when you move the red towards the orange, and then the green goes towards the teal, then it doesn't look like a Christmas tree at all. This is also red and green, complementary colors. You notice there's a bright red that's used as an accent, but pink is also red. So if I pick and hold that color and look in here, I've got red and green. Now it's showing me, sorry, I touched it. So it's showing me, because I picked pink, it's showing me a light blue green. But I don't have to be light on both colors. So if I drag this darkness thing down, I could see that this green in here is really close to what it's showing as complementary colors, but it's a lot darker. So this like blew my mind when I saw it, because I always thought that to get these things like complementary colors, you had to be like measuring it with a ruler and being really precise. But I found the ones I like are not, they're not precise. So the blue, the green here is maybe a little more green than what you would get, and it's a lot darker than what this color wheel tells me, but it's still red and green. Here's another one. It's got several kinds of reds and pinks, and then this greenish blue color. And you can see it's not, the red and pinks are brighter, and most of the greens are darker. There's so many of these. So I noticed that red and green is something that I love, even though I thought I hated it. Here's another one. If I pick that red and go into the color wheel, it's showing me a little more blue. So, okay, maybe that's not, maybe that's color is so much towards the orange. This is not complementary colors. Well, the next thing on the list of choices here is split complementary colors, which when you pick one color, it shows you two colors across from on the color wheel, but spread apart a little. And this, it's kind of the same thing as I said. You don't have to pick the exact complementary. And if you look here, we've got the orange, and then we've got green, and we also have blue. And are the exact same green and blue that's shown in this picture? No, but those are the main colors in here. So this is like a split complementary palette. If I pick the green, then it shows me purple and blue. So it depends which one you pick as the main color to get your split complementary. I've been picking the red on all of these and seeing what the other colors it gives me. So, sorry, clicked the wrong thing. So when we're in here, complementary gives you one color across from the color wheel. And as I'm saying, you don't have to be exact. You can change the darkness, or you can just say, well, there, but I really want this color. I don't really want that color. And then I can click that, and it puts it in my color to paint with. But if I want to get two other colors to go with my main color, I would pick, sorry, I keep clicking the brush instead of the color thing. I would click split complementary, and then it gives you two colors that go with it, and which are still in the same family. So we said the opposite of red is green, and we're getting a green and a blue here. So if that gives you three colors. It gives you like one color and then two that are opposite instead of just one. So that's split complementary. Analogous gives you three, but they're all together. So I might have some analogous ones in here. I'm not sure. So here's another one. Look, green and red. Something I never thought I liked. Yeah, this is kind of an analogous color, but it's also, well, maybe not. I don't know. Let's pick the blue. Yeah, there's the blue and the purplish red, but these are muted colors, so it's hard to tell. It also could be like a split complementary. Let's try that. So I pick the blue. Yeah, I get the blue here, and then I've got this muted red color here. So this is kind of a split complementary or complementary. So I don't guess I have really any analogous ones in here as I scroll through it. I'm seeing contrast a lot. So that's the thing that I've noticed. This one, let's see what this one is, because it's only got like greens and blues. So I go in here, well, the blue, it does show me this greenish yellow color. So that could be split complementary. So um, so there's no reds in here, but when I picked the blue, and I try these out, well, complementary, yeah, that's like this color here. A split complementary still gives me that color. It gives me a red, but they're not using it in this page. And this might be analogous because it's almost all in the blue family, but it does have a little contrast, which if I go in here and touch that aqua color, see this split complementary yellowish color there, yellowish reddish color there. They use it a little bit for the skin tone in the light. So I discovered that I like complementary and split complementary color palettes because all the ones I picked were like that. And I just went into them and pick a color, pick yellow, and then go in here and say, oh, look, the opposite's purple. Oh, well, I got pink. So let's try split complementary and see what. No, I still got blue. Let's try, we didn't look at these others, triadic and tetradic. Triadic gives you 3 colors equally spread on the color wheel. And this is what you might be used to if you're mixing paints and you want to try a triad. Red, green, and blue, yellow, magenta, cyan. These, like, if you wanted to try color mixing on paints, picking a triad like this would be cool. But I don't use it that much. And then tetradic gives you 4 colors. And here is where I get the yellow and the hot pink, but I'm not really using the other 2. There's a little bit, if you look in here, you see a little bit of the blue color in there for some of the text and some shadows. And there's a little purple, which isn't really in there, but that's also like a shadow color. So this the other thing I wanted to show you is that when you're in this and you pick something that shows you 3 or 4 colors, you don't have to use all of them. Here, she's just using 2 of them and she's ignoring the other ones. So it's almost like, I don't know why I keep hitting that. Probably because this is here and that's there. They're near each other, and I'm used to hitting the brush with use the brush most in Procreate. If I go into here and say analogous, I can get like yellow and pink and orange. But if I went here and said split analogous, I got all green and blue. But if I say that I have the same blue picked and split complementary, then I get like a yellow and a pink. It's more orange. So what I'm just saying is you can just use 2 of them, even if it shows you 3. So you can play with this to make your own colors. But what I learned the most from it is using it to analyze these things that I like and see, why do I like these? And it's all because for me, split complementary, usually only using 2 of the colors is what I like. So you need to do that for yourself to figure it out, because I don't know what you like. But when you make these pictures and then you go in and pick a color and go into this thing and just click on all the different things and say, like say here we got purple, green, blue, little yellow. This really has, is this a tetradic? And just click on the different ones and see what gives you the closest to what you're seeing in your picture. And that could teach you what you like. Any questions about that? I could never understand this before or why I liked these. And now I know that I like complementary colors. And I've learned a couple of things. I've learned that I like split complementary where there's 3 better than regular complementary. Complementary gives you 2. I like split complementary better, but I usually only pick 2 of them and to make my palette. And I
Okay,
learned that
that
from,
was going to be my question. Was
yeah,
okay, so now how do you so now you've drawn something and you just have the ink.
right.
Where do you start?
Um, a lot of times I start by doing these things. Um, like I look at those and I might say, you know, will say, mm, you know, I love this purple and blue and bright green, and I see that you know, I like that. I don't have it. It's not my most used color palette in favorites, but here's like purple and bright green. I know I like yellow because it's my favorite color, so I use yellow a lot. That's just me knowing me. So here's yellow with purple, and we saw the yellow with pink. So I said, well, okay, so some of these colors that I liked that I examined in my pictures, I'm gonna make a color palette for my um Croneville comic I'm working on. So I made this palette from scratch. Um, in my palettes, I have one called Croneville Carnival, and that's one I made from scratch. And I made it by fiddling around with some colors that I liked from the images that I had seen and trying them with different brushes and just playing with it. So you don't have to do that. You can actually just take a palette from a picture, you know, you could take a palette from one of these that you made. And so I can say, let's open this because it's just ink lines. I could say, you know, I really like those colors that I picked from that handbag photo, and I want to use that for my palette. And then I just go in, and before I start painting my picture, if it's the first comic, if it's the first comic or first page and I'm just developing my idea, I'll first start with a really solid brush, like my flatting brush or the syrup brush, or really hard edged airbrush that are solid. And I'll go into the colors and say we're going to use the ones from that photo that we picked. I set that palette to my main palette, and then I, you know, pick a color, and well, I got to pick a layer to draw on. So let's make a new layer to draw colors tests on. Okay, so I just go through it, and I might go in order. So I might just do the whole palette like this. I want to see what they look like painted. First, I do it with a solid brush to see what they look like. If you do flatting on your comics, and not everyone does, oops, used that one twice. If you do flatting on your comics, you want to know, you know, do these actually look the same? Now, here they look the same because I'm just having a white background on my page, and I have no special watercolor paper or anything. So, okay, oh, so those look, so far those colors, when I paint them, they look just like they do in the palette there. So, okay, that's nice. But maybe in this comic, I'm going to do watercolor. So these are my favorite brushes here that I use. So I have them in one folder. That's why I'm just scrolling through there. So here's one of my favorite watercolor brushes. What do these colors do with this watercolor brush? So I can go back down and start over with each color and kind of color with it, see what the colors look like with that brush, because they, you know, in this brush, they look lighter because it's adding water to it. And then I can go and say, well, what about this brush? This is another brush I like. So that I use a lot. I know I use it a lot. So, oh, look at that. I can get the light color and I can get the solid color if I press harder. And so I try all the colors with my different brushes. And then I might say, well, I don't really need to have black in here because I can always get black easily. And, you know, and I might put something else in. But this is what I do a lot. And then I decide. Now, here's what I wanted to show you what can happen though, is if you use watercolor paper. Let me import a watercolor paper. Let's see. Downloads. Somewhere down here I have papers. I made my text bigger so it shows up on the screen, but it makes more scrolling sometimes. So let's see. Somewhere in here I have a folder of downloaded papers and textures, favorites. Yeah, so here's a watercolor favorite I got. This is one from Calvin at Drifter Studios. But if you buy or download a watercolor paper package, it'll be something like that, this. So let me show you what happens here. So here's his thing that comes with these when you buy these watercolor packages. And they have a couple of layers in them that will be set to different layer blend modes. And they're all different. Whoever makes the packages, they do it differently. But I'm going to turn off the painting layer and add a blank layer. And I'm going to go to these colors and I'm going to pick the things that we were doing. And I'm going to pick my kind of solid brush. And I'm going to go across. And I'm going to see, do the colors look the same or not? Because sometimes when you use these papers, the colors don't look the same. Let's see, I think that's a lot darker than that. So, because I'm using this color palette with this watercolor paper, I might have to go in and say, I need to go lighter. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. So then I'll click on this and say set to current color. So I have to customize it more if I'm using these watercolor papers that come with these layers because they add the watercolor texture, but a lot of them make the colors change also.
Okay, I have a weird question.
Uh-huh.
Do you find in a case like this, because I do this all the time and have to adjust, that if you painted out everything that was in that palette, a swatch, could you do a generalized hue, saturation, brightness adjustment and adjust them all at once? Do you think they
Oh,
would just
okay, so let's try
I've
that.
never tried it. I'm just wondering.
No, I've never tried that either. Okay, so I'm going to do what we did before, is I'm going to paste this color palette in there. Instead of painting swatches of all of them, I'm going to do the screen capture. All right, and then I'm going to do copy and paste, copy and delete, I mean, and then paste it in, right? So there's that color palette. And now I'll duplicate it. So now I have 2 copies of the color palette. And let's move them so that they're not, so you can see both of them. Okay,
And I
so
think they have to be below the paper. Or maybe you don't want them there for what you're doing.
no, you do have to be below the paper in this.
There we go.
Okay, and let's do another one too and put it above the paper.
Then you'll see.
So, so this one is my original colors. This one's my original colors below the paper. And then this one we're going to mess with. Yeah, so that's a great question, Beth, and I don't know. But let's go into hue, saturation, and brightness, and we're on this layer, because remember, these things only work on one layer at a time generally. So let's bump up the brightness. Oh, that's looking good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we want to, I find that these things make the saturation sometimes jump up a little, so I've turned the brightness up quite a bit, like 50, 58%. 50 means no change. I've turned the saturation down a tiny bit. I might want to turn the saturation down a little bit more because see how bright these colors are? Let me turn that down a little more. Oh yeah, I like that. So yeah, that's a great idea. And then
Cool.
I can turn off the watercolor paper and see what palette I need to make. These colors will look like these colors with the watercolor paper.
Right.
Great question. And that's kind of advanced, you guys. So if you didn't get that, don't worry. If you are working with watercolor paper, you can look this video back up or ask me on the Mighty Network. That's a lot more advanced than what we were thinking about before. But I did want to point out to you that you will see color shifts if you use this watercolor paper. Not just this one, any of them that you get from other. So I tend to do something different if I want to add texture to my pictures. So, what was I looking at before? Oh yeah, we were looking at this. Um, so here, instead of having a watercolor paper, I tend to add a new layer at the top of mine. And I just, in my palette for my current project, this is what I'm doing lately. I don't do this all the time, but in my palette for my current project, I have these two tan colors and I have these two like taupe colors. One's light and one's darker. So I use either set, depending what this is more neutral, so we'll do this one here. And I have these brushes that add paper texture. And I've put my favorites in here. So there's this one called Sketching that I like. You can find all kinds of paper texture brushes for Procreate free and paid. So I color the whole screen with it. You'll notice I make my drawing really small and my brush is all the way big, so it's fast for me to color the whole page. So that's added a little texture. I think you can see it if I zoom way in. And then I go a little bit to the darker color of the pear, and I have this one called Milkweed that adds spots, like makes it look like the paper's a little spotty. And I color over like that. And and that changes my colors too, but I actually like the way this changes the colors, and I usually lower the opacity of that. So I've just screwed around with all kinds of things and come up that at currently, for me, this is how I add texture to my pages. And I'll lower the opacity, and sometimes I might change it to a different, like to multiply or color burn, or I'll try different um blend modes a lot. But most of the time I leave it on normal and I turn the opacity down and I get a texture I like that it dulls my colors a tiny bit as if I was not painting on white paper. Uh, um, Let me turn that layer off and on, but not a lot. And it makes the colors less saturated to me, which I like better than the watercolor paper that makes the colors more saturated. So, but how did I figure this out? I spend hours just screwing around with stuff in Procreate. So my favorite thing to do is learn something new. And so I don't find it a waste of time. If I sit in here, you can do this for the Friday Night Comics, Promptapalooza. Um, you could do 100-day project. You could pick
While
any
you're
kind of
watching
challenge.
TV,
Like what?
like anytime you're watching TV.
Yeah, you could draw from TV anytime you're watching TV. Pick the colors there. And last month and Saw, they did a month of drawing flowers, and you think, what do I need that for in my comics? Well, it would have been a perfect project for testing out colors, because flowers are colorful. Anyway, so yeah, so here's what I actually did for my Croneville thing is I tried out all different brushes that I liked that I might use, that are in my favorite brushes. And you notice most of them are watercolor, kind of watercolory brushes, because I do watercolor a lot. And then I've got a couple of more solidish ones. This is a smushy, blendy one. And these are from just brushes that I've been using over the past couple years that I decided I liked, and I've gathered them together. And so this was from a class on Skillshare. This came with Procreate. This was free on the internet somewhere. And this came in a set I bought. Yeah, so um, just because you get a set of brushes from somewhere doesn't mean you have to use them all together. And so that's what I ended up doing. And then I but I do a lot of stuff on paper too, and I put them together. So I set up a watercolor palette with basically the same colors in it that I had in my Procreate palette. And then I also gathered up oil pastels that are in the same colors. So that way I'm preset, because I know this is going to be a big project for me. If it was just a small project, I might not do all this, but this is the big project that I'm going to work on. So I have everything all ready with the colors that they match. And so here's some pages I made where it includes some digital. This is real watercolor in the background. Actually, this is probably all real watercolor. This I painted. This is oil pastel that I photographed, and then watercolor and digital. This was ink and watercolor with digital added. And this is all digital, I think. Yeah, this is all digital. So
Oh.
because I mix things together, I like to have it all where it's all going to come in. And it doesn't always match exactly when you bring it in. Let's see. So here's something I did with one of the photos that I just showed you that was in that 4. So this is the photo of a watercolor painting. So I added another layer, I duplicated it and set it to multiply, which made it darker because this is going to be at night. Then I added another layer and I drew on it with one of my watercolor brushes to make like the roller coaster path lighter. And then I put another layer in and I added like lights, like, cause you know, there's always lights on at a carnival. And I set this layer blend mode to add, and you'll notice I lowered the opacity because add blend mode, this is what it looks like normal. And that's actually not bad because it's still looking like lights. But when I look to add, it brightens it even more. So that to me was lights. And then I was just playing around. So I took the lines, I copy and pasted or drew some lines in white. And then I reversed the colors out of it and put some lines in black. So you don't, and I thought that was, really fun. And then I pasted in a character and stuff. So that's the same painting that I started this one with. And if I go down here, there's my same watercolor, but I added different layers to it with some stars for magic um and then when I covered the whole thing with yellow, I was like, what happened if it turns to day, or if someone shines a big spotlight on it? And I set that to overlay mode. And all of these, so now I didn't paint that with my, I started with those colors and this yellow came out of my palette, but when I set it to overlay mode, it did its thing. But if I go to my palette now and look at it, it still has like all the colors that are in my palette, even though I did a bunch of changes to it. So you can play with all the things we looked at in the previous class when we were looking at the adjustments here. You can play with all these things to change the colors even more from what you ended up with. So like I can duplicate my bag and go into, I do this a lot, gradient map. And I do this a lot, so I probably show you it a lot. Let's make a blue and green version of it. Let's bring the brighter green down a little more. So I just mess around with it. I don't think about color theory or anything usually when I'm messing with these gradient maps. I just mess around with them. And now I can go back to my layers, and this top layer that I did with the gradient map, I can play with layer blend modes and see what it does. And then also do changes in opacity. And I just play with it. So I do this with my colors a lot too. Oh, if I do that, look, it kind of tones down makes the whole thing less saturated. Ooh, who would have thought that? That's interesting. And that's what I do. So it seems like a waste of time maybe, but to me it's not, because this is how I come with it. I really and there's a new palette. I just came up with a new palette that I might save. Because to me that's really pretty. And it's totally different than what I started with. So that's another way that I come up with color palettes, is like I do a gradient map on a layer, and then I go into layer blend modes and just change it around until I see something that's fun. And then where did that come from? I don't know. it came from some math that Procreate did with the gradient map. Susan, you got a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Unrelated to what you were just doing, but
That's okay.
in the past, under palettes, Procreate comes with some palettes
Right.
like Campfire, Flourish. And so some of those colors I've liked and I have chosen them. And then it deletes it from that particular palette. And so when I go back to Flourish, for instance, there's a lovely purple missing, just a big white gap. And I don't know what I did with
Does
it.
it just, okay, I noticed something today. So here's the palette I made today. Now, I noticed something today, but I'll show you. I don't know if this is what you noticed, but I just because if you touch a color and then paint with it, well, I need to be a paintbrush that will show up. I paint with it. Then it shows up in your history. It's still in the palette, but I did notice something. I was trying to move colors around in the palette before, and sometimes when I did that, they disappeared. And I can't make that happen again. So it was a bug,
Oh,
but I did notice that happening before. They disappeared, but then when I went out and I quit everything and I came back to Procreate and went back into my drawing again, the colors were really there. They were still there, but they just disappeared temporarily. I don't know what that was. I did notice that before, and it was definitely a bug in Procreate. And I
ah,
don't know if that's the same thing that you had happen, but the only way the only way you're supposed to be able to remove a color from these palettes is if you press and hold and say delete swatch.
yeah, no,
Nothing else should make it um go away. But if you're worried, like what if I'm worried that I'm going to mess up my palette that I made for Chromebook Carnival? There's a couple things you can do. First is you can click the three dots and duplicate it. Now I have two of them. So if I mess up one, it's okay, right?
that's really helpful. Oh,
And the other thing you can do is click on the three dots and say share, and you can save your palette to your files. So I can go to my, I to my Procreate file, and now it says Croneville Carnival. It's going to be Croneville Carnival swatches, and I can save that. And now I have a backup of it outside of Procreate. So if I mess it up here, I can say insert from file, new from file, and I can go find my I looked in recents, but I could go find my Procreate folder, and there it is. If I click on it, then it brought it in again. So either make a duplicate of it or share it and save it to your files. So that way, if you mess it up, you can get it back.
okay. And I have, thank you. That's really, this whole hour has been very helpful to me. And on unrelated question, I have to make web comics. What pixels should I start the width?
Um,
Sorry.
Depends where it's for. I'm gonna shut off. I'm gonna pin my other video instead so I can actually talk to you guys. Uh, well, so that's it. It depends where it's for. So like if you're doing like Saw has this place called Seesaw Comics that like some of the teachers and stuff share comics on, and they don't have really any guidelines for it. So I usually make mine uh 1024 by 768. That's like it comes out a small file size, and it's for no reason other than that it's an old standard file size. So I usually use that. I often draw my things a lot bigger because I might want to print them too. And then I make a small version when I'm finished. But if you're talking about like webtoons or a specific place that you're going to submit something to that has comics on their website, you need to ask them what
Yeah.
size they want. Yeah,
Can I show you
so they're
some?
all different. There's no like standards like paper sizes there are. It's just everyone has different what they want.
So see this? Can you see this? It's long and tall and skinny.
Uh-huh.
Is that right? That just
Let me
seems,
see that again. Let's spotlight you so everyone can see it. Yes. So a lot of web comics are made that way. And because the reason they are is the reason they're made that way is because they're made to scroll on the phone. And so they're really long and skinny. Sometimes sometimes they split that up into separate graphics, but they're not made to be a page. So they're made to be scrolling on the phone. So you'll see one image, then you'll scroll up, and then you'll see the next one. And I saw one site, there's a tutorial on Clip Studio Pro that I can look up and paste in the Mighty Network, because I was thinking about making something in this format recently. And they say, like, draw one thing that would be a panel, and then you leave about 200 pixels, and then you draw another panel. And instead of like putting your text here and here, you'd put your text here and here, because people read it going from top to bottom instead of going from left to right, like turning pages. So that's what that is. It's that kind of a format. And people look at them not only on the phone, but they're that kind of file that's tall and skinny like that is designed for phone scrolling.
So if it's going to be seen on the phone and on the website, I would use this, I would still start with this tall and skinny
If
format.
that's what they want, if that's what the place wanted for you, and like websites like Webtoons, I don't know what the other ones are, but yeah, that's how they do it for those kind of sites.
Okay, thank you. I thought that looked so wrong. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, so but that's what that is. And if someone told you to use that size for a Webtoon, that's why. That's how they're designing it. But there's no like standards for that. Each company and each publisher does it their own way. So there's no it's it's even more frustrating in a way than getting something ready to print, because paper is paper. It might be a little different size, but but the web comics is just all over the place. So yeah. Any other questions before we break up for the day?
I'm wondering if I can even articulate this question that I have.
Okay, Carol.
It's about the safety for the colors around the edge of the
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so
See if you can articulate it and we'll look at it.
Okay, so I have this wonderful template from Adrian, and it says, don't put anything important here, buffer. And then it says the maximum page size, and then it has full page bleed only. So when I'm working, should I be coloring? And I'll just hold this up.
Your camera's off, Carol.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm going to do, is turn it on for a second. Okay, so see how it's got this bleed up at the top?
Right.
Should I be drawing over that? Don't put anything important here.
So here's what happens. You've got the red line on the outside, then the gray line. Yeah. So
Yep.
A bleed means something that goes all the way off the edge of the paper.
Right. Yep.
So that's the only time you want to put something that goes out into that area, is if you want it to go all the way off the edge of the paper. Like if your page color background is going to be, I'm going to switch back to my iPad so I can show you. You can put that down. So this will be somewhat sloppy because I'm not going to do measurements on it. I'm just going to do just some, I'm just going to make some boxes and color them in, and then I'll tell you what each one is.
Okay.
Whoops.
So if I don't want a white line around my color, then would I extend the color that I want all the way past that buffer area?
Right. So so here's what we have, right? You've got this area for your bleed. It's a different color than yours. Then you have this. So basically, I'm going to just get a brush. So say I'm drawing a tree, right? Say I'm drawing a tree. That's too crazy. Okay, I'm drawing a tree, and I don't want any part of my tree to get cut off in my drawing. And here it has a swing on it, whatever, right? So I don't want my tree to get cut off. So I draw my little tree here, and I don't move it outside of the center area, because if I do, it might get cut off when they cut the paper. It might not, but it might, because the paper moves a little when they're cutting it and stuff like that. So if I definitely don't want anything to get cut off, I put it inside the middle box. If I definitely want the tree to go all the way off the edge of the page, then I make it go all the way into that bleed area. But nothing should be in between there. That's why it says don't put anything here. So you're either going to have your tree all the way inside the middle box and not going into the red area, or all the way past, or it's red on my screen. Yours was, I don't know what color. But if you want it to be run off the edge of the page, you have to go all the way to the edge. And that could also be a color. So like if I'm just decided that in this page, my page back, you know, I want to have a red background, then I would have to make a layer that was filled with red that goes all the way off the edge. So I'm going to put my other thing back in here. Wait a minute. Put this to multiply mode. Let me just, red was a bad choice there. Let's make our page background blue. Okay, so now you can see, this is just here for guideline, but you can see that my blue, it goes all the way off the edge of the page. So if I want my page color to be blue, I don't want to color, I don't want to color my blue inside the box, because then I'll have a white border on it. So I want to make sure that my blue goes all the way to the edge, just like my tree. So does that help?
Yeah, to the absolute edge of the paper, not just past the buffer point.
So you want to be to the absolute edge of the paper or inside the box. Anything in here is iffy. It might get cut off on the edge, it might not, and you never want to put text or anything outside of the middle area, because it'll get cut off. I mean, unless it's like, and you know, that's different. But
Thank you.
Yeah. So it is confusing, because this is actually, I think they can make brush really small. This is actually, this line here. Let me get a color that show. This line here is actually where the paper gets cut.
Oh,
But it might get cut here.
Okay.
It might get cut there. So you don't, you know, because it might move a little bit. So this is called the trim line, and that's where the paper gets cut. So if you want, but if it moves a little, you're adding extra outside of it for something that goes to the edge in case the cutting is not accurate.
Okay, thank you.
And
Because I
that's
didn't
the
want
other
to
reason you
wonky.
don't put, that's the other reason you don't put anything in this area, because if the cutting's not accurate, anything in that area might get cut off.
Okay, because I
It's
didn't want it
usually
to
very
be
close.
inventing
Yeah.
a white margin for me.
If you
for
don't
no
want a
good
white
reason.
margin, make the background color go all the way off the edge. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's confusing. It's always confusing, and you might have to ask about it every time you're doing a project. That's just one of those things that is hard to explain and understand for pretty much everybody. So,
Okay.
all right, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. That was kind of fun. I love talking about color and playing with color. And remember, if you have questions in between these, you can ask me on the Mighty Network, and I will try to get them answered for you there too. So I'll see you in a couple.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.